Japan's exports has fallen for a second month and imports rises slightly. We begin from there. Japan's exports shrank 0.5% year-on-year in June 2025, making the second consecutive monthly drop, and missing estimates of 0.5% growth as rising U.S. tariffs weigh on foreign sales. Meanwhile, imports edged up 0.2%, pointing to the first increase in 3 months and beating forecasts of a 1.6% drop, supported by Tokyo's efforts to boost domestic demand from households and businesses. Still under foreign scene, Donald Trump plans uniform tariff later for over 150 countries. President Donald Trump said Wednesday he plans to send a single letter to over 150 countries outlining the tariff rates they will face, saying it's all going to be the same for everyone for that group. He noted these are not big countries with limited trade ties to the US, unlike China or Japan. All nations have faced a 10% baseline tariff since April, though Trump has hinted it could rise to 15% to 20%, without confirming specifics. About 2,000 countries, including the EU, Japan, and South Korea, have already received individual letters with tariff rates effective August 1st, prompting last-minute negotiation for better terms. Countries with major trade deficit with the US, such as Taiwan, Switzerland, and India, are still awaiting notification. Trump gave mixed signals on India, saying, "We're in a negotiation, but also we're very close to a deal." In Canada, Canada has imposed limits on steel imports, exempting US and Mexico. Canada unveiled new measures to support its steel industry amid 50% US tariffs, including limits on foreign-made steel imports, excluding the US, Mexico, before triggering steep duties. Prime Minister Mark Carney said the government will also review trade agreements and ongoing talks with Trump administration. Additionally, Ottawa will impose a 25% tariff by the end of July on imports from non-US countries containing steel melted and poured in China. And now to China, as China is to curb EV price war and boost consumption. China's cabinet on Wednesday pledged to contain irrational competition in the electric vehicle EV sector, applying stronger cost investigations and price monitoring, according to state broadcaster CCTV. Chaired by Premier Li Guang, the meeting addressed concerns over a 2-year price war in the world's latest auto market. The cabinet promised short and long steps to foster high-quality growth, though details were limited. Automakers were urged to honor supplier payment terms with support for innovation and quality upgrades. Regulators warned that cutthroat pricing could threaten the industry's sustainability. Separately, the cabinet unveils plan to support domestic consumption by easing restriction on household spending and improving its consumer goods trade-in program. And now to Nigeria, as crude oil output soars above OPEC a quarter. Nigeria's average daily crude production rose above quota allocated to it by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries in June 2025. And for the second time in 2025, the country exceeded its OPEC quota of 1.5 million barrels per day, a first in January and second in June. According to a report by the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, the country's average daily crude production was 1,505,474 barrels, representing 100.4% of the OPEC quota. Oil production, including crude and condensate, was approximately 1.7 million barrels per day. This was an improvement in crude production when compared to the previous months. In May, crude output stood at 1.45 million barrels per day, while both crude and condensate were 1.65 million barrels per day. Production was as low as 1.6 in March. In its remark, the NUPRC said, a lowest and peak crude, a combined crude oil and condensate products or the production in June were 1.61 million barrels per day and 1.82 million barrels per day, respectively. Still in Nigeria, the federal government issued 867 mining licenses in the first quarter, the minister says. The Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Dela Alake, has urged African nations to take sovereign control of its natural resources by halting the export of raw materials, raw minerals, and prioritizing domestic value addition through local processing and industrialization. The minister said the continued export of unprocessed minerals resources deprives the continent of critical economic benefits, including job creation, technological advancement, and sustainable development. Alake made the call on Wednesday at the opening ceremony of the fourth Africa Natural Resources and Energy Investment Summit held at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, where he also announced that the federal government had issued 867 mining licenses, resulting in 6.95 billion naira in generated revenue from licensing fees in just the first quarter of 2025, a direct result of Nigeria's aggressive reforms in the mining sector. According to Alake, the Mining Cadastral Office received over 10,000 title applications within the 3 months, processed 955 and approved 867 mining titles, which included 512 exploration licenses, 295 small-scale mining leases, 60 quarry leases, and 5 large-scale mining leases. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Customs Service and Port and Terminal Multi-Service Limited Command has announced collecting the sum of 204.7 billion naira as revenue for the first half of 2025. This was contained in a statement on Wednesday by the Public Relations Officer of the command, Abdullahi Abubakar. Abubakar added that the figure increased by 52 billion naira when compared to the 152.6 billion naira collected at the same time in 2024, representing a 34.1% increase. Speaking on the achievement, the Customs Area Controller of the command, Atani Daniel, stated that despite initial challenges encountered while utilizing the BODOGU platform, there have been improvements with over 90% stakeholder utilization and compliance level on the platform. He also disclosed that the command generated a sum of 301.8 billion naira from the BODOGU platform since its rollout in November 2024. Selling Nigeria. A president of Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote, says there is no justification for Nigeria's low power generation output, arguing that if his conglomerate alone can produce over 1,500 megawatts of internal use, the country should generate a far more. Dangote made the remark during a recent tour of the Dangote refinery in Lagos, where he highlighted the company's expanding energy footprint and called for deeper private sector involvement in power generation. According to him, Nigeria should not be grappling with 4,500 to 5,000 megawatts of electricity. Instead, it should generate up to 60,000 megawatts. The federal government, meanwhile, has unveiled an ambitious target to ramp up national electricity supply from the current output of about 5,500 megawatts to 8,500 megawatts within the next 12 to 18 months as part of efforts to stabilize and expand Nigeria's power infrastructure. Still in the power sector, 12 people died and 14 others sustained injuries in electricity-related accidents across Nigeria in the first quarter of 2025, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission (NERC) stated, accusing distribution companies of non-compliance with safety guidelines. In its first quarter 2025 report, NERC said a total of 31 health and safety incidents were recorded during the quarter. The Commission said it had launched investigation into all the incidents, the accidents also, and would continue to work with all stakeholders in the sector to improve the overall health and safety of the Nigerian electricity supply industry. Enugu Electricity Distribution Company was linked to 4 of the fatalities. The highest among distributions companies, just DisCos, was responsible for 3, and while Benin and Kano DisCos accounted for 2 fatalities each, Port Harcourt DisCos was linked to one there. Meanwhile, the Central Bank of Nigeria has injected $4.1 billion to defend the Naira as reserve decline. The Central Bank of Nigeria has injected a total of $4.1 billion into the foreign exchange market in the first half of 2025, a move aimed at stabilizing the naira and easing liquidity pressures in the currency market. Many stakeholders and analysts have argued about a continuous injection of money to support the naira while the naira struggles in the market. But we'll go on a quick break, and when we're back, it will be a conversation about the economy in Nigeria, looking at the recent inflation data that came out from the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, indicating further decrease in inflation numbers in the country. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It's your Business 360, and my name is Blyden. Okay, exciting times ahead. One of the conversations we'll have at this moment will be about Nigeria's inflation. As inflation dropped in June. We'll begin a conversation there before my guest gets to join the show. And Nigeria's headline inflation dropped again in June, falling for the third time to 22.22% from 22.97% recorded in May 2025, the softest since April 2023, driven by base effects and a relatively stable exchange rate. This is according to the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) Consumer Price Index and Inflation Report for June, released on Wednesday. Accordingly, the country's headline inflation decreased by 0.75% on a month-on-month basis. Meanwhile, the largest component of the inflation basket, food inflation, stood and rose slightly to 21.97% in June from 21.14% recorded in the previous month, likely reflecting the impact of the Salah festival, where saw livestock and commodity prices surge by an average of 35%. And now my guest joins the conversation, Mr. Abel Udi, joins the conversation this morning. Mr. Abel is a chartered accountant and a banker who will be giving us insights regarding Nigeria's inflation as it fell in June to 22.22% from 22.97%. Mr. Abel Udi, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Abel Udi. We're struggling to hear you from here, but so good to have you being part of the show. Well, control, quite difficult for me to hear what Mr. Abelode is saying. It seems like whispering there. But let's get to the conversation if it's clear for the public. And Nigeria's headline inflation has dropped in June and falling for the third time to 22.22% from 22.97%. And one of the arguments that's taking place at the moment is the fact that the largest component of the inflation basket, which is food inflation, has gone up slightly, 21.97%, but the overall inflation indices seem to be downward. What do you make of June's inflation indices? And put that side by side with the reversing effect that's taken place the last 3 months. Inflation seems to be downward in the country. Well, we'll go on another break, and when we're back, I will see how to fine tune things, and the conversation continues. Difficult to get what Mr. Ebel Udi is saying from here. Swift, Swift. Yeah, I'm not hearing him. Hold on. Is his sound okay now? I can hear you, but I wasn't hearing him. Was not hearing the guests. Yes, I can hear you now. Yes, though it's not very, it's loud and rowdy. Mr. Ebel, can you say something again? Mr. Ebel, Mr. Ebel. Okay, I think it's a lot better now. So you can come back to me. Let's see how we can wrap it up. Ah, the sound is echoing, Swift. Welcome back. It's so clear and interesting to talk about inflation standings around the world, but the one that concerns us the most would be that of Nigeria. And as we said earlier, Mr. Ebel Udi has joined the conversation. He's a chartered accountant and a banker, giving us insights regarding the inflation numbers for June that came out. Mr. Ebel, earlier we're trying to have a conversation, and let's go into it. It would be inflation for Nigeria after the NBS report yesterday. We see that June inflation dropped to 22.22% from 22.97%, and the last 3 months has been the same story. But many people are arguing, looking at the inflation numbers for food inflation and in June from 21.14%, a slight increase. And many are arguing, how come the largest component of the inflation basket seem to be going up, and we're saying the inflation numbers is going down? Mr. Abel, still very difficult to make sense of what you're saying. Um, quite quite difficult for me hearing you here. Okay. All right, can we have the visual of Mr. Abel Odi on the screen so we can see the person talking? Quickly, Mr. Abel, let's also talk about these things that's taking place now. Since the rebase effect, let's look at it. And many people are arguing that the rebase effects now has been a shadow of the reality because Nigerians are saying they're not feeling the impact of this. That the numbers are saying inflation is downward, but the people on the streets they're still buying commodities quite high.
Well, I think what happens, is the is taking at the time where the number of inflation. Last year, the CBN and the other, it agreed on raising um, uh, the inflation figure based on that is absolutely low. The government is not going to find the details of 2009 so it's actually the government is just before this.
Oh, all right, Mr.
So I think that the reason was second like that. However, because however, the reason was also not shown that the opportunity for our people are increased. It has also not shown that the power of living, of people are not very good. Because on the one sense of it, Nigerians are not affordable to support themselves and money, which is the basket of food that made up the different competition in South and I think practically what we forgot to invest in before. I'm sure you can impossible, these are not getting better for that in Nigeria. And for me, it is definitely the fact that the motorization that we have is not used to by demand and people the overall able to purchase things was driven by high cost of doing business in the country, which high cost of doing business means that the whole shown that increase in energy prices, the exchange rate as well, practically.
Okay, good perspective there, Mr. Abaludi. Let's also tie this to the possibilities of interest rate that will be taking place. At the 301st Monetary Policy Committee meeting will be taking place by the CBN on the 21st and 22nd of July, and are set to decide interest rate in the country. Current interest rate stands at 27.5%. You've seen the inflation numbers. Inflation seems to be coming down. What are the expectations from your end regarding interest rate and the stance of the CBN during the monetary policy?
Well, from experience with the current billion we feel that
Well, quite difficult to have Mr. Ebel Udi there. Connection issues anyway. But basically, it's made a bit of sense. Maybe just to have a take on the Monetary Policy Committee, a meeting that will be taking place at the stance of inflation that we're looking at, rather, the stance of interest rate that we're expecting. I mean, the fact that inflation has been consistently downward the past 3 months since the rebasing took effect in the Nigeria's inflation numbers from the NBS numbers that we got yesterday. Well, before we get to close the session, quickly let's see what is happening in the markets. First, we'll look at the commodities market and immediately switch gear to also talk about the currency market. But first, let's start with the energy market and see what the perspective, and afterwards, we'll talk about the metals and we'll talk about others. Energy market begins with US crude at 66 US dollars per barrel, and we're talking about Brent, which is Nigeria's price benchmark. The price level stands at 68 US dollars per barrel, gaining 0.176 points. Let's look at the metals quickly. Shoe price gaining 4 points. The agricultural commodities. Agricultural commodities is built around a certain level of successes. The price of soybeans at 1,014 US dollars per bushel, gaining 2.11 points, and wheat price falling by 1.26 points, 539 US dollars per bushel. The palm oil price at 4,247 Malaysian ringgit per ton, gaining 22 points. As we close and look at the states of the naira against the major currencies of the world on cryptocurrency market. The US dollar against the naira 1,520. We heard that the Central Bank of Nigeria had invested some amount of money, about $4.1 billion, in the market, the financial market, to support the naira against other currencies. No wonder we're seeing the currencies struggling against the naira. The cryptocurrency market, we close with it. Our crypto market indicates a drop for Bitcoin 385 points this morning, 118,350 US dollar. The price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been falling recently. Ether, Binance, Cardano seem to be a fairly strong. Ether gaining 60 points this morning. But Bitcoin, the mother of cryptocurrency, is struggling. Is the direction of the market and the courses that comes with it. And here we draw a curtain on today's edition of Business 360. We'll come your way tomorrow. Thank you for being a part of it. My name is Vladimir Kim, and thank you for watching.